welcome to Allergy Dragon's Lair. My name is Martha Morgan. I'm a specialty diet and allergy chef. On the Allergy Dragon's Lair podcast, we believe everybody deserves an equally safe and delicious place at the table. I can't talk today, so that was really slow, but that's okay. I'm super excited about this episode, and I always say that about every single one of my guests, but I truly mean it. But before we jump into this episode, a quick disclaimer. The views expressed here on our show are the personal opinions and life experiences I can't say experiences today. Experiences of ours and our guest. We are not healthcare providers or doctors. Please seek advice from your healthcare professional for any diagnoses or changes to your healthcare plan. So we're going to dive into this episode. So I have Arielle Clark here with me today. She is local here to Louisville, Kentucky. So I'm super excited to be really focusing on community here in Louisville, Kentucky, and people doing great things that also happen to have food allergies or intolerances or that kind of thing, because food is really universal. We all have to eat, to live. So Arielle, can you please take a moment and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. First off, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being able to have these types of conversations because things like this aren't really talked about enough. My name's Arielle. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm 31. Had to think about that for a second. I'm 31 and I am the owner and founder of Sis Got Tea, Louisville, Kentucky's Black-owned, queer-owned, woman-owned tea business, and now tea cafe since April 9th. A little bit about me in terms of my allergy background. A lot of gastrointestinal issues run in my family. So we've got everything from food allergies to food insensitivities to interstitial cystitis to gallbladder issues and removal to diverticulitis, IBS. All of those things kind of run in my family. And for me personally, I have had an emergency gallbladder removal, and I have what's called oral allergy syndrome, which is basically, my body gets pollen and food confused. And so, for example, if I eat an apple, my body goes, that's ragweed pollen, we should attack it. And then I have an allergic reaction to it similar to hay fever symptoms. So like sneezing and coughing and itchy eyes and itchy throat. So while it's not an anaphylactic reaction, it still causes those like really terrible hay fever / allergy symptoms. And then once it hits my stomach, I do not feel good for like a day or two. So I've got that. And then along with that, I have some other sensitivities. Like I can't do dairy. Like I'm basically lactose intolerant, but I ignore it. I take it more as a suggestion. And then I'm sensitive to caffeine, and then I can't have too much fruit sugar because it gives me tummy issues. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and like my background in terms of food and things like that, in terms of like food allergies and sensitivities.
I just recently got to meet you in person, actually, literally like a couple weeks ago. And we've been trying to plan this, and it's just been one of those things keep coming up. But you're welcome for, coming on here, or welcome for taking me up on the, invitation to share your story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for being so accommodating with my schedule changes and with my body stuff, because I do have chronic pain as well. So there are times when I have flare-ups and times when I have to reschedule things. So I really appreciate that accommodation and flexibility.
Not a problem. I totally understand. Autoimmune diseases, a lot of digestive issues. We got it here, Yeah. So question, when did you have your gallbladder removed?
It was January, 24th of 2022, I believe.
How can you remember that exact date?
Because it was a wild ride from start to finish. So I knew that gallbladder issues ran in my family. Quite a few of my relatives have had their gallbladders removed. I had never really thought about it because it had never really affected me. And then one day I was eating dinner with my partner and I just got the most horrendous burning sensation in the upper right side of my abdomen. And I was like, ooh, heartburn. And then it got worse and worse and worse to where it looked like I had been overtaken by a demon. I was just like writhing in bed, like trying to find a position that was comfortable. I was hanging my top half over the end of the bed. I was like twisting in all these different directions. And so my partner called an ambulance. They took me to the hospital. They did a CT scan with contrast and they said everything came back normal, go home, take some antacid. That was a Sunday. And the burning did not stop. It did not go away. It didn't get any better. the following Tuesday, so 2 days later, I was like, I need to eat something. I wasn't hungry, I wasn't thirsty, and I tried to make a like peanut butter banana protein smoothie, and I took one sip and I just almost threw it back up. And that paired with I wasn't hungry and I wasn't thirsty after over 48 hours of not ingesting anything and feeling like absolute garbage, and also being pale, being clammy. And my mother has a medical background, so we grew up like watching ER shows and stuff together. She's an EMT. And all of these things together, plus what I've learned from my mom throughout my life, I was like, this is not normal. This is bad. Like something really bad is happening to where I'm not hungry, I'm not thirsty, and I haven't ingested anything. Went back to the hospital. They sat me in a wheelchair in the waiting room, and I fell out of the wheelchair because I was like so weak and clammy. And the nurse triaged me and she took my heart rate and she was like, I don't know why they left you out in that waiting room with a heart rate over 140. And so, long story short, they put me in a room in the ER and they do an ultrasound, and I get a new ER doctor and he says, your gallbladder is really inflamed and full of gallstones. You'll have to have surgery. We're going to go ahead and admit you. We'll do your surgery tomorrow. I was like, okay, this is my first hospital stay and my first surgery all in one go.
That's an initiation right there.
Right, exactly. I was like, oh, baptism by fire. Good. And after 10 minutes, the ER doctor comes back and he goes, actually, you're going to have surgery in 15 minutes. So we're going to prep you right now because it's getting worse. And so I had my gallbladder removed during emergency surgery on Tuesday, and I was in the hospital for 2 days. And the surgeon like comes in nonchalantly after my surgery, and he was like, yeah, your gallbladder is one of the worst I've ever seen, and it was necrotic and dying inside of you, and it was like twice the size it was supposed to be. Also, it partially collapsed one of your lungs, and I had to give you a JP drain because everything around it was so inflamed. Anyway, feel better, take care. And he left. And so my partner and I looked at each other, we were like, he just saves lives on the daily and just goes home and has dinner with his family, So that was an experience. And I will say, highly recommend gallbladder removal because it was like night and day when I woke up from anesthesia. I felt so much better. But also with that, it gave me a lot of other food restrictions. Like I can't have processed meat. I can't have alcohol. Not that I drink anyway. I'm sober by choice. I don't enjoy alcohol. And can't have processed meats, can't really do alcohol. And then sometimes my stomach just acts up on foods that are typically safe. Sometimes it just wants to party. So yeah, that's my gallbladder removal story in a nutshell. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see it and they wouldn't put it in a lava lamp for me, but.
And the reason I was asking is because I had mine traumatically removed when I was like 14 years old. So, and I'm 47, just to give you some background. So I'm a little bit older than you, and just a little bit. So I was 14, but I was misdiagnosed for like 2 years. And so I had that pain and all that and the vomiting and stuff. And then finally it just got unbearable. And very similar as far as like the sweating and the thing. And then my grandmother, I'm not a crier because I have like a high tolerance for pain because I've had RE since I was 4. So if I start crying or I'm like, I got to go to the hospital, it's like, you need to drop what you're doing right now.
Right.
Got to go now. And I was just doubled up in crying. I love the demon thing because I kind of felt like that too. So I was like, yeah, that was a epic description of how you feel when you were having the gallbladder. And they left me alone because they insisted on doing a pelvic exam. I'd never had a pelvic exam before. And so this woman takes me into this room, leaves me standing there, and I pass out when they know I haven't been drinking or eating for like 2 days, just like
That's wild.
Isn't that crazy? I'd never passed out before. And of course, they're freaked out. My mom's like, what? And I was like, you should have come with me. Because my mom was like, oh, she'll be fine. And I'm like going, getting a pelvic exam. I'd never had one before.
Right.
But all that aside, after they made sure that it wasn't a female thing, then, after I had been misdiagnosed, they kept telling me I had a hiatal hernia. My doctor did, and was just giving me medication because that's what we do in America. We give you medication.
Right.
So totally understand that. But the amazement of me is just like the exact date because I couldn't tell you. It was summer. That's all I can tell you at this point. And I was 14.
It was one of those things where when I was out of the hospital and recovering at home, I had a moment of, holy cow, I almost died. Like it it partially collapsed one of my lungs. It was pressing on my liver. It was actively dying inside of me. It also gave me a small umbilical hernia. And yeah, if I had waited any longer, I may not be here. And so
Mhm.
I just remember that because I was also teaching and I taught on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
And so I think it was Monday, I messaged my students. I was like, hey, I'm not going to be in. I'm still having some tummy issues, stuff like that. After that, I messaged them and said, so we won't have class on Thursday. Mama had surgery, but she's gallbladder free now. See you on Tuesday. So, and then by the time the next Tuesday rolled around, I had gotten my JP drain removed, but I didn't have enough energy and I couldn't sit up for long periods of time. So we did virtual teaching. And then that Thursday I was back in the classroom and I, was honest with my students. I said, hey, your girl has one less organ. If I have to like sit down or literally lay on the floor because it's uncomfortable, just, yeah, full disclosure, because folks don't realize that you're getting a whole organ removed. And so
Yeah.
you can, trigger warning for those in the virtual audience, talking about bodily organs. They don't tell you at the hospital that after you get your gallbladder removed, especially when it's enlarged, you can feel your organs shifting around. And it
Mm.
is the weirdest thing I've ever felt. Like sitting up and just feeling like just a little bit of shifting in your insides is just wild. I don't know if you experienced that, but it was something else. Just
Yeah.
moving around.
Yeah, it was. And then you do the same thing when you give birth if anybody happens to carry children.
I've heard that.
It's bizarre. It really is. And I remember this was one of the bizarrest things about my gallbladder surgery coming in. It was like, because I ended up being in the hospital for a week because mine was completely filled with grain stones. They said that it was just completely filled. There was nothing. And I didn't get to talk to the surgeon. They talked to my parents because I was 14. So I don't know really how bad it was and how much they didn't tell me. But I was in the hospital for a week. And I know I have had a full incision too, because a lot of people end up with a tiny one. Like I had a full incision because they did exploratory as well. That's what my mom told
got
me.
it.
So I'm sure there was some other stuff going on. I did not have a drain, but I remember this one nurse that came in and she was like, well, you just had the worst pain next to having children. So you should be fine. I'm like, what? A thing
That's not how that works at all, but okay. Yeah, sure.
I was like, what a thing to compare that with when I'm 14 years old.
Great.
Like,
That's so great. That's
wasn't that
love
awesome?
love the comparison. Yeah, they gave me laparoscopic surgery, so I have 4 tiny incisions. So luckily they did that and they clipped my liver and all that good stuff. And the surgeon said typically he doesn't use a drain, but he used one on me because of how much inflammation and like crud was around my gallbladder. And so my body basically just needed help getting all of that out. Having a JP drain is one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced body wise, because you wake up and there's just a hose sticking out of you, stitched into your body. And it's just like, I remember looking down and just staring at it like, huh, it's just, yeah. And then the removal of it is a whole different story we'll have to get into another time, because that was a wild sensation as well.
I wanted to broach again, if you're cool with it. You had, when we first got to speak, you talked about your allergy testing. And one of the big things that I talk about is, or I would love to talk about with a lot of people, is the fact that minorities actually in this country have a higher chance of having food allergies. Okay. Technically, the statistics out there, CFAAR has done the whole thing on it. If you want to take a look at that, I will link that below for our audience to look at. But it was something very interesting that I found out last June when I went to FACES. And I was like, okay, so the Black community, the Hispanic, Asian, and then whites fall on the list. Okay. But we have the higher chance of actually getting, help because we do not have an equal healthcare system. I know for you, you had a pretty traumatic testing, if you don't mind going into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I decided to get allergy testing, specifically food allergy testing, because I wanted to see everything that I was allergic to, because at this point in my life, it has always been trial and error. Like try something, oh, I'm reacting to it. Let me add that to my little notes app on my iPhone of things that I'm allergic to. And so I wanted to try and be more proactive about it. I also wanted to kind of like stop gaslighting myself in terms of it's not that bad. It's not an allergy. I'm crazy type of thing. So I went and got food allergy testing, and they did the testing on my back, and I got to choose which foods I wanted to test for. So I chose a whole bunch of them. So they start doing the test on my back starts itching and all that stuff. I can't see it personally, it's on my back. The nurse comes in, she's white, and she looks at my back and says, "Oh, I don't really see anything. You're not really reacting to anything. I do possibly see a very mild reaction to," it was either clams or oysters. And I'm conflict avoidant, so I didn't say anything. But in my head, I was like, well, then how do you explain like me having all these symptoms when I eat like apples or pears or cherries? And I was just kind of like, okay, you know. So she walks out and she brings in a black nurse to assist, I think, with paperwork or something. And the black nurse catches a glimpse of my back and she says, "Oh, she's reacting to a bunch of these things," and starts like pointing them out to the white nurse. And the white nurse looks and she says, "Oh, I can see it now." And so then I am sent home with some papers about oral allergy syndrome. And if you have an allergy to ragweed, here are all the fruits and veggies raw that you can react to. And so I remember both sitting in my car on the way home and then also laying in bed at night thinking, what would have happened if that black nurse had not walked in and said something? Right. And so then it made me wonder, you know, how many other instances have there been of Black folks going to medical doctors or any type of treatment center or going in for any medical anomaly and getting the wrong answer or being dismissed? Because one of the things I've heard a lot in my experience as a Black woman with Black friends who go to medical facilities is quite a few of them are stereotyped as drug seeking or that their pain isn't as bad as they think it is. And so, you know, one of the things I emphasize when I go to doctors and get prescriptions and things is I refuse to take any narcotics if I can. One, I actually have a sensitivity to morphine. If I have morphine and morphine derivatives, it gives me really bad migraines, for one. For two, opioid epidemic, I don't want to take any chances and things like that. And three, I think to myself, if I say non-narcotic pain relief, maybe they'll take me more seriously because they won't see me as a drug-seeking Black woman. So all of that to say, if that Black nurse had not walked in, I don't know what type of answers I would have gotten that day. So that's my allergy testing story in a nutshell.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it was one of those things that we spoke about that just really struck a chord with me because you know, we don't necessarily think about those things because we're all on different spectrums.
Absolutely.
And you know, we've all had to deal with, I think, gaslighting or different issues throughout the healthcare situation. Me, for my weight, you know, possibly couldn't have celiac disease because you are overweight, et cetera, et cetera. That's another discussion for another day. I'm thankful for you that that nurse came in at that time and was able, and unfortunately, it would probably have gone very differently if she had not come in there.
Absolutely.
And I'm definitely amazed though that they were actually able to and they gave you a lot of information on oral allergy syndrome. So that is cool itself. But yeah, thankfully she was there. So it would have, that's just one of those things I don't have a lot of words for other than the fact that just it boggles my mind. But at the same time, we also have to realize that it's people, human beings that are doing these jobs, and some are very good at their jobs and some are not.
Exactly.
I recently got to meet you in person at Sis Got Tea, which is incredibly adorable. If you are in, you're welcome. If you're in the Louisville area, you have got to go stop by. And the tea was really good too. The atmosphere is really cool. You have a lot of places for different people. Shoot. Well, I hope they're all different. Anyway, you have a lot of different seating for accessibility for different people. And so I really appreciated that because I have, some issues with that as well. Can you kind of share your journey with us? I know you've been in Rainbow Blossom with your tea itself for a while where you could actually purchase it. That's actually where I first saw Sis Got Tea. So
sure. So I started the business August 2nd of 2019 after basically growing up in Louisville, Kentucky as a Black queer woman and not necessarily having the resources or connections that I needed to basically thrive. So, growing up as a Black queer woman, there's the Black aspect of it and the queer aspect of it for me anyway. And so going through the trials and tribulations of being a queer person and then like finally being able to go to these what are considered milestone events like Kentuckiana Pride and like getting into the bar at age 18 because you have a sponsor was great and all. But there weren't very many Black people. And also, it was very alcohol centric. LGBTQ life in general is very alcohol centric and substance centric, I'll say. And so, I started meeting folks as I got older who didn't enjoy going to bars, were in recovery, so couldn't drink, just didn't enjoy drinking, literally physically couldn't get into bars because of accessibility issues, overstimulation, schedule conflicts, things like that. And when I was in college, I actually started a informal meetup called Queer Women in Coffee, where every other Sunday we would go to Highland Coffee in Louisville, Kentucky, which is now closed due to the pandemic, and they really couldn't recover from it. And every other Sunday we would just get together and talk about whatever we wanted to talk about. And so taking that and also thinking about my past experiences, I went ahead and started the business after, some things happened in my life, I'll say, leaving a job that was very, very unhealthy for me, the death of my director at the time and very close friend at my full-time job, and just that idea never leaving my brain. And the idea for an actual tea business happened in college randomly on a whim. So long story short, we registered in August of 2019, and I had about $200, and I used that to open the Sis Got Tea business bank account. And we did a Kickstarter with a goal of $6,000 in 60 days. And when we published it, we didn't have any product. We didn't have anything except an Instagram and a Facebook page. And we raised $4,000 in less than a week. The Courier Journal caught our Kickstarter. They did a news story, and we actually hit our goal in about 2 weeks. After 60 days, we had raised over $10,000, which just goes to show how badly the community needed and needs this type of space. And so with that money, I started, researching inventory, doing all the other little things like, getting accounting software and all these things. And long story short, some businesses reached out wanting to work with me, and them giving me a platform gave me the start that I needed to really get the ball rolling in terms of building a website, getting an online store together, things like that. Years pass, and here we are now. We have a cafe open, and we serve as a safe, accountable, sober space, particularly for Black folks and LGBTQ folks. Obviously, all are welcome. We really strive to be as accessible as possible in terms of the offerings we have, whether it be tea. So we try to stay away from any teas that have like alcohol or some type of alcohol derived ingredient. So even with our extracts, we try to use alcohol-free extracts and things like that. And for our treats that we offer, we always try to go vegan, nut-free, soy-free, and gluten-free. So basically we try to avoid the big 5 allergies whenever we can. We do have, I think, 3 or 4 blends that have some type of nut in them. It's either almonds or nutmeg, but those are labeled very clearly in airtight containers, kind of kept away from everything else. And so there's no cross contamination. But other than that, it's just a place where you can have some really delicious tea, sit down, enjoy the vibes, maybe get some work done, and, have a better opportunity to enjoy things because we really want to be accessible to everyone, including those folks who have dietary restrictions for any reason.
Yes, you do. It's an amazing, amazing place. I really love it. And my youngest kiddo actually went before me. They happen to be non-binary. And so they got to go, hang out, and they didn't feel like they were going to be, serve something that was going to cause them an issue.
Mm-hmm.
They have over 30 food allergies and celiac disease. So to have that space for them as well is just awesome. So I really, really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you so much. And that's the goal, right? Is to be sure that everyone feels like the space is accessible and that they can enjoy things just like, quote unquote, anybody else or people without allergies.
Mm-hmm. And you can be an adult and not drinking alcohol. So that's even more
right,
important.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
We are definitely tea drinkers. I actually have my cup of tea with me today.
Nice. I had Coke Zero this morning. So the caffeine helps with headaches. So I was sipping on that this morning, and I'm going to switch to water shortly.
Yeah. Gotta have the caffeine there.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to have you back on to explore other aspects with you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to take a moment. I always tell everybody to, either come up with a thought or anything that you want to really make sure that we address in this podcast before we end.
I don't know why this is the first thought. I think it's because I've I've been delving into this recently because I like to feed my employees. Like, we have a little snack area in the back because I don't want them to ever be hungry while they're working. And, it's not even like if you need to eat, go in the back and eat. It's like, no, you can eat at the register. I don't care. Just don't eat any of the big 5 allergies at the register, just in case somebody has an airborne allergy. Anyway, why is it that protein alternatives like protein bars and things like that, why do all of them either have soy or nuts or both? Because I'm allergic to soy and I'm allergic to almonds, and I just really want to be able to eat a protein bar and not worry about if I'm allergic to something in it, because I can't have processed meat anymore. So I can't have like lunch meat or breakfast meat or anything like that. I'm not a big red meat person. And, I am on medication for my ADHD, and that can rob me of my appetite when I take it. And so sometimes I just need something quick and easy that is full of protein, gets me, the protein that I need to keep me full for a long time. Why is soy the default? How far does it go? Is it the agriculture industry? Is it like big farmer? I don't know. Is it like the dairy industry with subsidies and stuff? I don't know. But that's one of those things that frustrates me to this day, is not having any like really easy run into Kroger, grab a protein bar alternatives to soy. There is the Go Macro brand. Theirs are soy free, but a lot of them contain nuts. Luckily, they have ones that don't have almonds, but they're I think it's like $25 to $27 for a 4-pack of the bars. So just something to think about for next time.
I agree with you completely. I think that we don't have enough alternatives out there with the soy. That is crazy. But yeah, that was a really cool thought to be like, hey, why do we have that?
Even like Soylent in those meal drinks, it's like soy. I'm like,
well, now they're also upping pea protein instead of soy. I'm seeing that. Why is it in everything? And you're opening up a big can of worms with that last thought.
Right, exactly.
And it's true though. And it's some stuff to definitely be addressed, and why we don't have more alternatives, and why it gets to the point that we have to unbox everything really. And
yes, absolutely.
Leave anything else before we end?
No, I think I'm good. Just if you're ever in Louisville, Kentucky, stop by Sis Got Tea. We're at 976 Barrett Avenue in Louisville, Kentucky. The zip code is 40204. I remembered it this time. And of course, you can stop by our website. It's Sis Got Tea KY. So it's SOSGOTTEAKY.com. We have an online store, and then you can just check us out and read more information. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, cool. And the links will be down below to check them out on social media and all that good stuff. Go ahead, comment, like, subscribe, and definitely give us a really good review if you happen to be listening to this on any of our podcast platforms. Thank you again, Arielle, for sharing your story and taking the time to be a guest here on Allergy Dragon's Lair.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we hope this helps tame your allergy dragon. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.